The morning sun cast long shadows across Terra Nova University's main campus as 12 alien beings stepped off their transport shuttle. Commander Jake Morrison watched them with barely contained excitement. After 3 years of planning, the Galactic Exchange program was finally becoming reality. These were the first non-human students to ever set foot on a human educational facility. The group was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Zixtal from the Vorthak Collective looked like a walking crystal sculpture, their body made of translucent blue minerals that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. Blumescent 7 from the Netheri Commonwealth appeared as a shimmering cloud of golden gas contained within a transparent environmental suit. Kretok from the Solarian Republic stood on 4 webbed legs, their amphibious skin glistening, with moisture from the breathing apparatus they wore. Other species were equally fascinating. The insectoid klaxon representative clicked and chirped through mechanical translators, while the plant-like Verdani student swayed gently in the morning breeze, their leaves rustling with what Jake assumed was curiosity. Each alien wore different breathing equipment, environmental suits, or protective gear suited to their biology. Dr. Lisa Campbell, head of the Xenobiology Department, greeted the delegation at the shuttle landing pad. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying each species' requirements and cultural practices. Her team had modified an entire wing of the university to accommodate the different atmospheric needs, gravity preferences, and dietary restrictions of their new students. "Welcome to Terra Nova University," Lisa said, her voice carried through the universal translation devices each alien wore. "We are honored to have you here as part of our first interspecies educational exchange." The aliens responded with various gestures and sounds that their translators converted into polite acknowledgments. Jake noticed how they stayed close together, clearly nervous about being on an alien world. He couldn't blame them. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 2 years, and their reputation as Deathworlders preceded them everywhere. Lisa led the group toward the main academic building, pointing out various facilities along the way. The aliens moved cautiously, their sensors constantly scanning their surroundings. Jake had been told that most species found human environments unsettling. Earth's high oxygen content, intense gravity, and what other species considered extreme temperature variations made it a challenging place for most galactic citizens to visit. The lecture hall Lisa had chosen for orientation was one of the university's largest, with high ceilings and excellent ventilation systems. She had specifically requested it to help the aliens feel less confined. The group settled into specially designed seating that accommodated their various body types and breathing requirements. "Today we'll begin with an overview of human culture and social customs," Lisa began, activating a holographic display that showed images of human daily life. "Understanding these basics will help you integrate more easily into campus life." The Xiao aliens watched with apparent interest as the display showed humans in various activities. There were images of students studying in libraries, people eating in cafeterias, and groups gathering in social spaces. Lisa explained each scene, providing context about human behavior and social structures. 20 minutes into the presentation, the lecture hall door opened. Professor Ben Rodriguez walked in, clearly unaware that the alien orientation was taking place. He carried a large ceramic mug that steamed gently in the cool morning air. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the room as he approached Lisa's desk. "Sorry to interrupt," Ben said quietly, taking a long, satisfied sip from his mug. "I just needed to grab those research files from yesterday." The reaction from the alien students was immediate and dramatic. Zixtal's crystalline body began flashing rapid red warning patterns. Blumescent 7's gaseous form condensed into a tight defensive ball within their environmental suit. Kretok made a series of alarmed croaking sounds while backing away from Ben as far as their seating would allow. The other aliens showed similar signs of distress. The insectoid klaxon began clicking frantically, their translator struggling to keep up with rapid-fire warnings. The Verdani students' leaves turned a pale, sickly color and began curling inward. Even the usually stoic, rock-like Granite Collective representative started glowing with what appeared to be alarm signals. Ben stopped mid-sip, confused by the sudden commotion. He looked around the room, then at Lisa, who was equally puzzled by the alien's behavior. "What's wrong?" Lisa asked, addressing the alien delegation. "Is there a problem with the environmental systems?" The universal translators worked overtime, as the aliens began speaking rapidly in their various languages. Fragments of translated speech filled the air. Toxin detected, poison consumption, medical emergency, and immediate evacuation required. Kreetok, who seemed to be the unofficial spokesperson for the group, managed to compose themselves enough to speak clearly. "The human," they said, pointing a webbed finger at Ben, "has consumed a dangerous chemical compound. We must contact medical personnel immediately. The toxin concentration is extremely high." Ben looked down at his coffee mug, then back at the aliens. "You mean this?" he asked, holding up the mug. "It's just coffee." The word coffee sent another wave of panic through the alien students. Zixtal's crystal body now pulsed with urgent warning colors. Blumescent 7 expanded their gaseous form to its maximum size within their suit, a defensive posture Lisa had read about in their cultural briefings. "Just coffee?" Kreetok repeated, their voice rising in pitch. "The alkaloid concentration in that liquid would kill any member of our species within minutes. How are you still standing?" Ben chuckled, not understanding the severity of the situation from the alien's perspective. "I've been drinking coffee for 20 years, he said. "I usually have about 4 cups a day, sometimes more during exam periods." The translation of this statement caused what could only be described as mass hysteria among the alien students. Several began making what appeared to be emergency calls on their communication devices. Others started backing toward the exits, clearly preparing to flee what they perceived as an immediate threat to their lives. Lisa quickly moved to calm the situation. "Everyone, please remain calm," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure what was happening. "Professor Rodriguez is perfectly fine. Humans consume coffee regularly. It's a normal part of our culture." "Normal?" Zixtal's translator crackled with static as their emotional state interfered with the device. "Your species regularly consumes concentrated neurotoxins as part of normal behavior?" Ben took another sip of his coffee, which caused several aliens to emit sounds of distress. "Well, when you put it like that, it does sound a bit strange," he admitted. "But coffee is harmless to humans. We actually need it to function properly." The aliens fell silent, staring at Ben with what could only be described as horrified fascination. In that moment, Lisa realized they had stumbled upon something much more significant than a simple cultural misunderstanding. The aliens weren't just surprised by human coffee consumption, they were genuinely terrified by it. Dr. Campbell quickly made a decision. "I think we need to adjust today's lesson plan," she announced. "Professor Rodriguez, would you mind staying? To help explain human dietary habits?" Ben shrugged, settling into a chair with his coffee. He had no idea that his simple morning beverage was about to become the subject of the most important xenobiological discussion in human history. 2 hours after the coffee incident, Amy Foster found herself in the strangest assignment of her academic career. The graduate research assistant had been pulled from her normal duties to give an emergency presentation to 12 very concerned alien students. The university's crisis management team had decided that someone needed to explain human eating habits before the aliens filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council. Amy set up her equipment in the Environmental Studies Lab, a room designed with multiple atmospheric zones to accommodate different species. The alien students filed in slowly, still clearly shaken by their encounter with Professor Rodriguez and his coffee. They maintained a safe distance from Amy, who noticed several of them were now wearing additional protective equipment. "Before we begin," Amy said, activating the lab's holographic display system, "I want to assure everyone that humans are not in any immediate danger from coffee consumption. What you witnessed this morning is completely normal for our species." Zixtal's crystalline body flickered with skeptical patterns. "Normal for a species that evolved where exactly?" they asked through their translator. Amy smiled and activated her first hologram. A 3-dimensional image of Earth appeared in the center of the room, slowly rotating to show the planet's surface. "This is Earth, our homeworld," she said. "I think understanding where we come from will help explain why we can drink coffee safely." The hologram zoomed in to show various Earth environments: dense jungles, vast deserts, frozen polar regions, and deep oceans. Data streams appeared alongside, each image showing temperature ranges, atmospheric pressure, and other environmental factors. "Your planet appears to have extreme environmental variations," observed Bloom Essence 7, their gaseous form rippling with what Amy had learned was curiosity mixed with concern. "That's correct," Amy replied. "But that's not the most important part." She gestured, and the hologram changed to display Earth's official galactic classification. Large, bright letters appeared in the air. Class 12 Deathworld. The reaction was immediate. Several aliens made sounds of alarm, while others began rapidly consulting their personal data devices. Kreetalk's amphibious skin changed to a deep blue color that Amy's briefing materials had described as indicating extreme stress. "Deathworld?" Kreetalk croaked. "You mean humans evolved on a planet actively trying to kill them?" "In a manner of speaking, yes," Amy confirmed. She changed the display to show a classification chart. Galactic survey standards rate planets on a scale of 1 to 15, based on how dangerous they are to most known life forms. Class 1 planets are considered paradise worlds with gentle climates and harmless ecosystems. Class 15 planets are completely uninhabitable hellscapes where nothing can survive. She pointed to Earth's position on the chart. Earth ranks as a Class 12 death world. Only 3 other known species in the galaxy evolved on planets rated Class 10 or higher. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of environmental systems. Amy could see the aliens processing this information, their various biological systems showing signs of shock and disbelief. Captain Steve Williams entered the lab at that moment, having been called in to provide additional context. The former military officer turned academic carried himself with the confident bearing that had served him well in both careers. He also, Amy noticed with slight alarm, carried a steaming cup of coffee. The aliens immediately tensed as Steve approached, their attention fixed on his beverage. Steve noticed their reaction and paused. "I take it you've heard about our coffee situation," he said with a slight smile. "Captain Williams served in Earth's military before joining our faculty," Amy explained to the aliens. "He can provide some insight into how humans adapted to survive on our world." Steve set his coffee down on a lab bench, noting how several aliens moved further away from it. "The thing you need to understand," he began, "is that Earth didn't just try to kill us randomly. Everything on our planet evolved specific strategies to be deadly." He activated another hologram showing various Earth plants and animals. "These are just a few examples of what humans deal with every day. Poisonous snakes that can kill with a single bite. Spiders whose venom causes tissue death. Plants that produce toxins strong enough to stop a human heart." The images continued. Sharks with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Bears that could crush bones with their claws. Tiny insects carrying diseases that had killed millions of humans throughout history. "How did your species possibly survive?" asked the insectoid klaxon representative, their mechanical translator adding emphasis to their distress. "We adapted," Steve replied simply. "Over millions of years, humans developed resistance to many toxins, immunity to countless diseases, and tolerance for environmental extremes that would kill most galactic species instantly." Amy pulled up a new set of data. Human liver function, for example, is incredibly advanced compared to most species. We can process and neutralize chemical compounds that would be immediately fatal to others. She displayed a molecular diagram of caffeine. "This is the chemical structure of caffeine, the active compound in coffee. For most galactic species, this acts as a powerful neurotoxin that causes immediate system failure. But for humans," Steve continued, taking a sip of his coffee while several aliens made distressed sounds, "caffeine acts as a mild stimulant. It makes us more alert and focused. We've actually learned to use it as a tool." "A tool?" Bloom Essence 7's form condensed with what Amy recognized as confusion. "Coffee plants evolved caffeine as a pesticide," Amy explained. "It's designed to kill insects and small animals that try to eat the plant. But humans learned to harvest these beans, process them, and consume the toxin deliberately because it gives us an advantage. Steve nodded. In our military, coffee consumption is considered essential for maintaining alertness during long operations. What could kill you makes us better soldiers. The Verdani student, who had remained quiet until now finally spoke. Their translated voice carried notes of amazement and horror. Your species weaponized the defensive mechanisms of other life forms. In a way, yes, Amy confirmed. Humans didn't just survive Earth's attempts to kill us. We turned those dangers into advantages. Coffee is just one example. She brought up statistics that made the aliens' various biological systems register increasing levels of shock. Humans consume over 2 billion cups of coffee daily on Earth. Many humans drink multiple cups per day. Some drink 10 or more cups, without any negative effects. 10 cups of concentrated neurotoxin. Zixtal's crystal body was now pulsing with rapid warning patterns. How are there any humans left alive? Steve chuckled. Not only are we alive, we're more productive because of it. Coffee shops are social centers where humans gather to work, study, and build relationships. We've built an entire culture around consuming what you consider poison. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that transcended species barriers. They were beginning to understand that they hadn't just encountered a species that could drink toxins. They had met beings who had turned their planet's deadliest offerings into the foundation of their civilization. Amy concluded the presentation with one final piece of information. Coffee isn't unique in human culture. We also consume alcohol, another toxin that most species can't process. We eat plants that contain capsaicin, a chemical weapon that causes pain in most life forms. We consider these things not just safe, but enjoyable. As the aliens filed out of the laboratory, Amy heard fragments of their conversations through the universal translators. Words like impossible, terrifying, and how do they exist drifted through the air. Captain Williams finished his coffee and looked at Amy. I think, he said with a grin, we're going to need to prepare a much longer presentation about human dietary habits. The next morning brought Dr. Peter Hayes to the environmental lab, carrying a briefcase full of medical equipment and what the alien students now recognized as the dreaded coffee mug. The biochemist specialized in how different species' bodies worked, and he had volunteered to explain the science behind human coffee consumption. Behind him walked Karen Mitchell, the university librarian, wheeling a cart loaded with historical books about coffee. The 12 alien students had returned, though Amy noticed they now sat even further from the human presentation area. Several had upgraded their protective equipment overnight. Zixtal wore what appeared to be additional crystal shields, while Kretok had installed extra filters on their breathing apparatus. Good morning, everyone, Dr. Hayes said cheerfully, setting his coffee mug on the lab bench. The familiar whoosh of air filtration systems activated immediately as the aliens' environmental suits detected the caffeine vapors. Today we're going to explore the biological effects of caffeine on human physiology. He activated the holographic display system and brought up a three-dimensional model of a human brain. Bright neural pathways lit up in blue and green, showing electrical activity flowing through different regions. This is a normal human brain, Dr. Hayes explained. Now watch what happens when caffeine enters the system. He pressed a control, and red indicators began flowing through the brain model. The neural pathways became brighter and more active. Fascinating, observed Bloomescent 7. The neurotoxin appears to stimulate rather than destroy brain function in humans. That's exactly right, Dr. Hayes confirmed, taking a sip of his coffee. Several aliens made alarmed sounds. Caffeine blocks certain chemical receptors in our brains, which prevents us from feeling tired. It also increases the production of chemicals that make us feel alert and focused. Karen Mitchell stepped forward with her historical materials. What's even more remarkable is how long humans have been doing this, she said. Coffee consumption dates back over 1,000 years in human history. She activated a timeline that showed the spread of coffee consumption across Earth. Images appeared of ancient coffee ceremonies, bustling coffee houses in historical cities and modern coffee shops on every street corner. 1,000 years of regular poison consumption? Kretok's voice carried a tone of disbelief. How did your species survive? Not only did we survive, Karen replied, we thrived because of it. Coffee houses became centers of learning, business, and social progress. Some of humanity's greatest scientific discoveries and political movements began in coffee shops. Dr. Hayes brought up a new set of statistics that made the aliens' environmental suits work overtime to process what they were seeing. Current data shows that humans consume approximately 2.25 billion cups of coffee every day across our homeworld. That's roughly 400 billion cups per year. The numbers hung in the holographic display like an accusation. Zixtal's crystal body began flashing what Amy had learned were confusion patterns mixed with distress signals. But here's what makes this truly interesting from a biological perspective, Dr. Hayes continued. Humans have developed what we call caffeine dependence. Our bodies actually require regular coffee consumption to function normally. Before he could explain further, the lab door opened and maintenance worker Carlos Garcia entered. He wore the standard blue uniform of the university's facilities department and carried his ever-present coffee mug along with a toolbox. Carlos was known throughout the campus for his cheerful attitude and his ability to fix anything that broke. Sorry to interrupt, folks, Carlos said with a friendly wave. Just need to fix that broken terminal in the corner. Don't mind me. Carlos set down his toolbox and immediately took a long drink from his coffee mug. The aliens watched with the same horrified fascination they might show for someone juggling live explosives. Carlos, Dr. Hayes called out, recognizing an opportunity for a real-world demonstration. Would you mind sharing your daily coffee consumption with our visitors? Carlos looked up from the broken terminal, his face lighting up with enthusiasm. Oh, I love talking about coffee. I probably drink about 12 cups a day, maybe more during busy periods. The translation of 12 cups caused immediate chaos among the alien students. The insectoid klaxon representative began clicking rapidly in what appeared to be distress calls. The Verdani students' leaves turned completely white and began falling off. 12 cups of concentrated neurotoxin? Blumescent 7's gaseous form contracted to its smallest possible size. How are you not dead? Carlos laughed, apparently delighted by the question. Dead? Coffee keeps me alive. I start drinking it at 5 in the morning and don't stop until bedtime. Been doing it for 30 years now. What happens if you don't consume coffee? Asked the Granite Collective representative, their rocky voice rumbling with concern. Oh man, that's rough, Carlos replied, pausing in his repair work. I get terrible headaches, can't think straight, feel exhausted all the time. I tried to quit once for health reasons, but I was basically useless for a week. My wife made me start drinking it again because I was so miserable. Dr. Hayes nodded knowingly. Carlos is describing caffeine withdrawal syndrome. When humans consume coffee regularly, our brains adapt to expect it. Without caffeine, we experience physical and mental symptoms that can be quite severe. Your species has been chemically enslaved by a plant toxin? Zixtal's translation carried notes of horror and amazement. Not enslaved, Karen Mitchell corrected, gently. Enhanced. Coffee doesn't control us. We control it. We've learned to use caffeine dependence as a tool to maintain consistent mental performance. Carlos finished his repair and stood up, draining the last of his coffee. I wouldn't call it slavery, he said with a grin. More like a really great partnership. Coffee helps me work better, think clearer, and stay happy. In return, I make sure to drink it regularly. He headed toward the door, then paused. You folks should try it sometime. Oh wait, I forgot. It would probably kill you instantly. That's too bad, you're really missing out. After Carlos left, the lab fell into stunned silence. Dr. Hayes used the quiet moment to display more research data about human caffeine consumption patterns, addiction rates, and the massive global industry built around coffee production and distribution. Let me summarize what we've learned, he said, finishing his own coffee while the aliens watched in fascination. Humans regularly consume a substance that would be immediately fatal to most galactic species. We've been doing this for over 1,000 years. We consume billions of doses daily.
Many humans are physically dependent on continued consumption, and we consider all of this completely normal. There's one more thing, Karen added, consulting her historical records. Coffee consumption actually increases during times of stress
or crisis. When humans face greater challenges, they drink more of what you consider poison. The Verdani student, who had been quietly growing new leaves to replace the ones that fell off earlier, finally spoke. Are all human recreational substances deadly to other species? Dr. Hayes and Karen exchanged glances. Well, Dr. Hayes said slowly, coffee isn't technically our strongest recreational substance. We also consume alcohol, which is literally toxic waste produced by microorganisms. And we eat chocolate, which contains another compound that's poisonous to many Earth species. Chocolate? Several aliens asked simultaneously through their translators. Maybe, Karen suggested gently. We should save that discussion for tomorrow. I think they've had enough revelations for one day. As the alien students filed out of the laboratory, Amy could hear their translators working overtime to process rapid conversations in various languages. Words like impossible, how do they exist, and what kind of death world creates beings like this echoed through the hallway. Dr. Hayes looked at his empty coffee mug and smiled. I should probably get a refill before my next class, he said. This explaining humanity business is exhausting work. Dean of Students Helen Parker stood outside the university shuttle, watching 12 alien students reluctantly board the vehicle that would take them into downtown New Geneva. Despite their protests about entering what they now called a toxin distribution zone, she had convinced them that observing human coffee culture in its natural environment was essential for their education. I want to assure everyone that we'll maintain safe distances from all coffee establishments, Helen said, through the shuttle's communication system. Our security chief, Tony Russell, will accompany us, along with Professor Janet Wright, who studies human social behavior. Tony Russell, a former police officer turned campus security chief, checked his equipment one final time. He carried emergency medical supplies, portable air filters, and communication devices linked directly to the university's crisis response team. Professor Wright sat nearby, reviewing her notes about coffee shop sociology. The shuttle moved through the city streets toward New Geneva's historic coffee district, a 12-block area that contained over 40 coffee shops, cafes, and roasting facilities. The aliens pressed against the windows, staring in amazement at the sheer number of establishments dedicated to what they considered poison distribution. Look at the lines, whispered Bloom Essence 7, their gaseous form rippling with disbelief. Humans are actually waiting in queues to purchase neurotoxins. Through the shuttle windows, they could see dozens of humans standing patiently outside various coffee shops, many already holding empty cups from previous purchases. Some humans carried multiple cups, apparently buying coffee for others who couldn't make the trip themselves. The shuttle stopped outside the Daily Grind, one of the district's most popular establishments. Through the large windows, the aliens could see humans sitting at tables working on computers, reading books, and having animated conversations while consuming their beverages. This is a typical human coffee shop, Professor Wright explained, as they observed from the safety of the shuttle. Notice how humans use these spaces for social interaction, business meetings, and recreational activities. Tony Russell activated the shuttle's external air filtration system before opening the door. Everyone stay close and keep your protective equipment active, he instructed. We're going to observe from the sidewalk first. The aliens exited the shuttle cautiously, their various environmental suits working overtime to filter the coffee-scented air. The aroma from dozens of nearby establishments created what they perceived as a toxic cloud hanging over the entire district. Inside the Daily Grind, barista Greg Adams was preparing for the morning rush. He had been making coffee for 8 years and took pride in his craft. Completely unaware that he was being observed by terrified aliens, Greg began his usual routine of grinding beans, calibrating machines, and preparing for another day of what he considered normal work. The aliens watched through the window as Greg handled what they knew to be concentrated poison with casual expertise. He measured coffee grounds, operated steaming equipment, and even tasted his preparations to ensure quality. Each action caused visible distress among the alien observers. "He's consuming the toxin directly during preparation," Kretok croaked, in horror. "How has he survived working in such a dangerous environment?" 8 years, Tony Russell read from the shop's employee information board. "Greg has been working here for 8 years, handling coffee every day." Food science student Lauren Bell emerged from the coffee shop carrying a large cup of freshly brewed coffee. She had volunteered to serve as a human guide for the alien field trip, though she hadn't expected their reaction to be quite so dramatic. "Hi, everyone," Lauren said cheerfully, taking a sip of her coffee while several aliens backed away. "I thought I'd explain what you're seeing from a human perspective." She gestured toward the coffee shop's interior, where dozens of humans sat peacefully consuming their beverages. "This is what we call a third place in human society. It's not home, it's not work, it's a neutral space where people come to relax, socialize, and build community connections." Community connections over shared poison consumption? Zixtal's crystal body flickered with confusion patterns. "From our perspective, it's just a pleasant beverage that helps us feel alert and social," Lauren explained. "Look at that table over there. Those are business executives making important deals. And over there, that's a couple on their first date. Coffee shops are where humans form relationships." Professor Wright pulled up data on her portable device. "Studies show that approximately 60% of human romantic relationships begin in coffee shops or similar establishments. Coffee consumption is directly linked to human pair bonding and social structure formation." The aliens observed with growing amazement as humans continued their normal activities. A group of students studied for exams while drinking coffee. Parents brought their children to share pastries and hot chocolate, which Lauren explained was another caffeinated beverage that humans considered suitable for young ones. "You give neurotoxins to your offspring?" The Verdani student's leaves curled with what appeared to be protective instincts. "Hot chocolate has much less caffeine than coffee," Lauren assured them. "We introduce children to caffeine gradually, building their tolerance over time." The observation continued as they moved to other coffee shops in the district. At Been There, Done That, they watched humans conduct job interviews over coffee. At Grounds for Discussion, a book club met weekly to discuss literature while consuming various caffeinated beverages. At The Roasted Bean, humans purchased bags of coffee beans to take home for personal consumption. "The economic scale is staggering," Professor Wright noted, consulting her research. "The global coffee industry generates over 200 billion human currency units annually. Coffee is the second most traded commodity on Earth after petroleum." Tony Russell pointed to a nearby coffee cart where a line of humans waited patiently for their morning beverages. "That vendor sells approximately 500 cups of coffee every day from that single cart. Multiply that by millions of similar operations worldwide." The aliens watched a particularly busy intersection where 4 different coffee shops operated within sight of each other, all with steady streams of customers. Humans moved between the establishments, comparing products, meeting friends, and conducting business while consuming what the aliens considered industrial-grade poison. At Caffeine Central, they observed an even more disturbing sight. Humans were purchasing coffee in bulk quantities, buying multiple cups at once or large containers designed to provide caffeine throughout the day. Some humans carried what appeared to be personal coffee-making equipment, ensuring they could produce toxins wherever they went. Mobile poison production units? Bloom Essence 7 condensed with alarm as they watched humans with portable coffee makers. "Thermos bottles and travel mugs," Lauren explained. "Many humans bring coffee with them to work, school, or other activities. We've designed our entire society to accommodate constant coffee consumption." The field trip concluded at the university's own campus coffee shop, where they discovered something that shocked the aliens even more than anything they had seen downtown. Professor Dan Foster was teaching an entire economics class while drinking what he cheerfully described as his 8th cup today. His students took notes and participated in discussions, apparently unimpaired by the toxic atmosphere. "Your educational institutions operate in contaminated environments?" Kretok asked in disbelief. "Not contaminated," Professor Foster corrected, overhearing the comment. "Enhanced. Coffee helps students stay alert and focused during long study sessions. Most human universities have multiple coffee shops on campus. As the aliens reboarded the shuttle for the return trip, they were quiet, processing what they had witnessed. They had seen an entire human society built around the regular consumption of what they considered deadly poison. Humans didn't just tolerate this toxin. They had made it the foundation of their social, economic, and educational systems. Helen Parker looked at the subdued alien students and realized they were beginning to understand something fundamental about humanity. They weren't just observing a strange dietary habit. They were witnessing a species that had turned their planet's attempts to kill them into the cornerstone of their civilization. Tomorrow, she announced, we'll discuss how coffee consumption affects human space exploration and military operations. The aliens' various biological systems registered what could only be described as anticipatory dread. The campus observatory sat on the highest hill overlooking Terra Nova University, its dome open to the star-filled night sky. Dr. Rachel Morgan had chosen this location for the final session with the alien students, hoping the peaceful setting would help them process everything they had learned about human coffee consumption over the past week. The 12 alien students arrived just after sunset, their various environmental suits glowing softly in the darkness. They had grown more comfortable around humans during their stay, but Dr. Morgan noticed they still maintained careful distances whenever coffee was present. Tonight would be no different, as she had brought her usual evening cup along with graduate students Kevin Price and Michelle Turner, who were working on calculations for an upcoming space mission. "Welcome to our final discussion," Dr. Morgan said, settling into her chair with her steaming mug. The aliens automatically moved to what they now considered a safe distance. "Tonight I want to help you understand what coffee really represents in human culture and evolution." She activated the observatory's holographic display system, which projected images across the dome's interior surface. The first image showed Earth from space, slowly rotating against the backdrop of stars. "For the past week you've learned that humans consume what you consider poison," Dr. Morgan began. "You've seen our cities built around coffee shops, our social structures dependent on caffeine, and our economy driven by what you call toxin distribution. But I want you to understand the deeper truth about what you've witnessed." Kevin Price looked up from his calculations, coffee cup in hand. "The deeper truth is that humans don't just survive our death world," he said. "We turned it into our greatest advantage." The holographic display changed to show a timeline of human evolution, starting millions of years ago and progressing to the present. Points along the timeline highlighted major developments in human survival and adaptation. "Every challenge Earth threw at us became a tool," Dr. Morgan explained. "Extreme weather taught us to build shelters and create clothing. Dangerous predators forced us to develop weapons and strategies. Poisonous plants led us to discover medicine and eventually, recreational substances like coffee." Michelle Turner added her own perspective while reviewing star charts. "What makes humans unique isn't that we survived a death world. 3 other species managed that. What makes us special is that we weaponized our survival mechanisms." She pointed to her coffee cup. "This represents the pinnacle of human adaptation. We found a plant that evolved chemical weapons to kill anything that tried to eat it. Instead of avoiding it, we learned to harvest it, process it, and use its toxins to enhance our cognitive abilities." Bloom Essence 7's gaseous form rippled, with what the humans had learned indicated deep thought. "So coffee consumption is actually a military tactic?" "In a way, yes," Dr. Morgan confirmed. "But it's more than that. Coffee represents our fundamental approach to existence. When we encounter something dangerous, we don't run away. We study it, understand it, and find a way to make it serve our purposes." Lab technician Scott Davis entered the observatory, carrying a data pad and, predictably, a cup of coffee. He had been monitoring the deep space communication arrays and had news about the upcoming mission that Kevin and Michelle were preparing for. "Sorry to interrupt," Scott said, taking a sip of his coffee while several aliens instinctively moved further away. "I have the latest reports from the Mars colony supply run. Thought you'd want to see this." He handed the datapad to Dr. Morgan, who reviewed the information with interest. "This is fascinating," she said. looking up at the alien students. Scott has brought us the perfect example of what I've been trying to explain. She displayed the data on the observatory's holographic system. The report showed supply consumption rates for various human space missions, with coffee ranking as the third most requested item after oxygen and water. Human space crews actually perform better on long missions when they have access to coffee, Dr. Morgan explained. The same substance that would kill most of you makes us more effective explorers and colonists. Scott nodded enthusiastically. The Mars colony specifically requested double coffee rations for their next supply delivery. They say it's essential for maintaining productivity during the 18-month construction phase. 18 months of continuous poison consumption in an isolated environment? Kreetak's voice carried notes of amazement and horror. And this improves their performance? Dramatically, Michelle confirmed, consulting her mission planning documents. Crews with adequate coffee supplies show better problem-solving abilities, improved teamwork, and higher morale. Coffee isn't just something humans want in space, it's something we need. Kevin pulled up additional data about human space exploration. Every human ship, station, and colony has coffee-making facilities. It's considered as essential as life support systems. The aliens absorbed this information with their now familiar mixture of disbelief and growing understanding. Dr. Morgan could see they were beginning to grasp something larger than just dietary habits. "Let me ask you a question," she said, finishing her coffee while the aliens watched. "In your species' histories, when you encountered something dangerous, what did you do?" "Avoided it," Zixtal replied immediately, their crystal body pulsing with certainty. "Standard survival protocol is to identify threats and maintain safe distances." "Exactly," Dr. Morgan said. "That's the normal response. It's logical, safe, and has allowed your species to thrive. But humans developed a different approach." She stood and walked to the observatory's main telescope, gesturing toward the stars visible through the open dome. "When humans encountered danger, we moved toward it. We studied it, experimented with it, and found ways to use it. Coffee is just one example." "This explains your rapid technological advancement," observed the Verdani student, their leaves rustling with realization. "Your species doesn't avoid challenges. You transform them into advantages." "That's right," Scott agreed, pouring himself a fresh cup of coffee from the observatory's machine. "Human space exploration follows the same pattern. Most species develop space travel to escape their homeworlds. We developed it to find new challenges." Dr. Morgan brought up a final holographic display showing human expansion into space over the past century. "We didn't leave Earth because it was trying to kill us. We left because we had learned to thrive on a death world, and we wanted to see what else the universe could throw at us." The alien students sat in contemplative silence, processing this revelation. They had come to study human education, but instead had discovered something far more profound about the nature of humanity itself. Zixtal was the first to speak. "When we return to our homeworlds, our governments will ask for reports about humanity's suitability as galactic partners. How do we explain what we've learned?" "Tell them the truth," Dr. Morgan suggested. "Humans are not just survivors of a death world. We're a species that turned our planet's attempts to kill us into the foundation of our civilization. We consume toxins for pleasure, build societies around dangerous substances, and consider all of this perfectly normal. And tell them," Michelle added with a smile, "that humans who drink coffee are even more effective at whatever they're trying to accomplish." As dawn broke over the campus, the alien students watched hundreds of humans beginning their day with the same ritual they had observed all week. Students, professors, staff members, and visitors all participated in the consumption of what the aliens now understood was more than just a beverage. Coffee represented humanity's fundamental approach to existence, turning every challenge into an opportunity, every danger into a tool, and every attempt by their world to kill them into a reason to thrive even more successfully. Kreetak began composing their official report to the Solarian Republic. The opening line read, "Humans should be classified not merely as Deathworlders, but as impossible Deathworlders who have weaponized their own planet against the challenges of existence. Recommend immediate diplomatic alliance and suggest we, Never under any circumstances attempt to serve them our traditional beverages.